Welcome to The Inscape. My name is Tanya Nelson, and I'm here with special guest Taya Nelson, and we're taking a deep dive into my book, The Inscape. Today we're going to dive into Chapter 3. This is a fun one because I think this is where things start to get real. And I think the first meditation does a great job of walking us through a very brief version of what it feels like to start feeling the pain of what it means to ask deep, big questions in our lives.
Yeah.
And asking who am I is, the ultimate question. So it's not a small question. And whenever we ask big questions, I think the part that we don't fully anticipate is the letting go and the pain of what that really will look like. And we talked a little bit about that in chapter 2. And this chapter really goes into a lot of what causes that pain. And so much of it is the doubt that we start to feel. And I love in the first meditation how it first starts talking about how tired we are from the first phase of our lives and going on this journey of the first phase usually ends up being the time in our life where we have done everything that we've been taught to do and that we've been programmed to do. The part of the meditation where we talk to the traveler that comes by, I think is such a good representation of doubt. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that's probably why, like you're saying, this is the first chapter that things really get real, is because up until this point, we've had little interaction with, like, the outside world. In the meditation in chapter 2, I believe there is an interaction, but it's very supportive, where this is more questioning. And so I think this is the first point or beat in the story where that's where, the established beliefs and logic of this world and this concept that you've put together is tested. And I think that's reflected even as we go into your story in the next chapter, which is so beautifully articulated and really captures that in a kind of a real life scenario.
Yeah, as we go into chapter 3, it is where I can definitely start to feel the pain of when the title is The Lies That We've Been Told.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting because, yes, we have so much programming as children of all the goods and the bads and the rights and the wrongs, and here's your roadmap to be valuable and successful and worthy of love and all the things in our lives. And so we have all this programming, and it is interesting because, like I said, the first phase of our life, we usually end up in, I'll speak for myself personally, by the time I asked who I was, I really had checked off almost all of those boxes. And most of my clients that come to me, this is the point in their life where they say, I think I'm having a midlife crisis,
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny that we articulate it like that, when in all reality, we all have these midpoints in our lives where we have traveled this road and we have done most everything. I won't say everything, but most everything that we've been taught and programmed to do. And so at this point in my journey, this is where we go back and I'm able to really look at where these lies started and where I believed certain things about myself. And specifically, the one that I'm able to articulate here is where I believed that I needed another person in my life. And it walks through where as children, we don't always, we're not lacking as much as until we start believing these lies.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just interesting because I was a very independent child. I was the youngest of 7 kids. And I remember, going into my imagination every day and feeling whole and pretty much just all around really happy and independent. I never really felt like I needed anybody. My parents were older and my siblings were older, and there really wasn't a lot of codependency that went on for me. And it wasn't until this point that I had gotten into high school that I remember believing that this was the path and that it was time to find somebody else to complete me. And that if I didn't have somebody, right, if I didn't get asked to the dance, if I didn't get asked, if I didn't have a boyfriend, if I didn't, that somehow that was going to start to define me and my value and my safety even in the world. So it was at a point where I think I started to believe that I wasn't okay on my own, which was very interesting when I started to really ask the question, who am I? And I had to really go back and start to look at who was I even as a kid, and what were the lies that I had been told.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Where would you say like the foundation of that began? Like, how did those seeds get planted?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that they get planted, like I said, I had 7 siblings, so I watched so many of them get into relationships and leave. And, and I think that played a role in it, and watching everyone start those, that phase of their lives. And so I was doing a lot of observing and watching. I would say that religion was probably one of the biggest parts for me. I was we were very religious growing up, and it was integrated and weaved into every part of my life. And so this idea of finding your person and your other half and not really even passing a test until you did was a big deal. And that was part of a lot of what I believed part of the path was, and the programming was weaved into a lot of things, and every TV show that I watched, right. I think just like everyone, you start to believe just all the fairy tales and the stories, and of course not many stories go past the point of, what they say happily ever after is, and that's just usually right after the wedding.
Yes.
So there was a lot of programming, I think, in my subconscious about that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's a very widespread narrative, this idea. It's interesting to think about, as I watched you kind of craft some of the story together for the book and articulate some of these moments. It's interesting to look at where a lot of this doubt originates, because as we move into the next chapters, as you know, they're going into the observer and this idea of witnessing our own lives and things like that. Like, awareness is such a big key. At what point do you think that kind of came into the picture of when you really started to notice these things? Because obviously we picked 2 kind of fairly unconscious parts of your life. Yeah. But at what point would you say like the awareness came in and you really started to realize these lies? Because I don't know if we exactly hit on that moment in this chapter.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that I started to feel like most people do, like I said, kind of those points in my life where I believed I was supposed to feel something different inside of myself. And so it's always that feeling of like, I can feel something's missing, right? And because I believed that I wasn't whole, or that I was going to get love from another person, I could feel that empty feeling, or that searching feeling that was going on, and something felt like it was missing. And so I think the awareness came from the pain, I would say, or the discomfort from not feeling like I had arrived, or that something was missing, or the separateness that I know now, the separateness from myself. I'd also been taught and shown, by my mom, that in order to be loved, or in order to be in this, this relationship, or to be whole, there was a certain way you had to show up. And so one of the other lies that we talk about in the book is I believed that I had to play this role of perfection. And, as you know, it looked a little bit like the 1940s housewife, and I believed that I had to be what I believed the perfect wife was, and the perfect mom, and have everything put together. And I was also working full time, and, just burning the candle at all ends. And so, the awareness came from feeling like I was doing everything outside of myself, putting everything into action, and yet still inside really feeling like, I wasn't receiving the payoff for that,
observing like the disconnect.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's interesting because the way you start the book is kind of laying the groundwork for this almost circular structure, because searching, like you're talking about, is such a big theme in your story, and subsequently in the book. And a lot of the point of the book is to reach this arrival point, this destination at the end of a journey. But as we both well know, that's very illusionistic, because it is a very circular journey.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I mean, and it's so interesting because it's circle beyond, inside circle. There's so many layers, right? So even in this chapter, there's this circular moment of, returning back to my younger self, and really going back and looking at where I believed something was missing, and where this all started, and really going back and looking all that. So yeah, I would say that, you ask where the awareness came from, and it wasn't until, later in life, but in order to find it, I had to circle back into my childhood as well, and see, where these patterns and these beliefs started to come from, and what was I missing, where in this program did I go, quote unquote, wrong, so asking who am I, and I had been told that it was supposed to look a certain way, and then not really feeling like I had received that was part of that beginning step of that journey. And to the meditation and to this chapter's credit, I think that we talk a lot about the doubt that comes in when we start to do that circling back, and how am I supposed to believe my younger self? She's not the wisest, smartest. I clearly have been on the journey, and I think there's some interesting things that go on with ego there as well. And I don't think people really look to our younger selves for answers the way that we maybe could. I think the end of this chapter is a really good one to really consider these full circle moments, and how far we get out from ourselves along the journey. And as we're listening to all of this, programming and as we're searching for things outside of ourselves, and we're checking off the boxes, we're moving farther and farther away. And I think this the circular motion of looking at our lives is so important, because as we move farther and farther out from ourselves, that's the journey back, is coming back into the inscape, coming back into ourselves, and realizing that all the things that we had been searching for, and all the lies that we had, been told, and all the things that we believed we were going to get from outside sources, it's that circular motion that comes back into ourselves as well. And I love the beginning of the book where it says, or the beginning of this chapter where it says that it should be, exploring the inscape should be the easiest, most natural thing in the world. Connecting back to ourselves should be as intuitive as breathing. After all, this is where we find the essence of who we are, the core of our being, the foundation of our existence. It should be easy to return back to ourselves. And I think this is a great place to realize that this actually is a very difficult journey. And it doesn't make a lot of logical sense that returning back to something that is so natural would be difficult. And it's fascinating when, we talk, I think there's a lot of buzz around doing self-work and self-love and all the things that go along with that. And it is quite the process to be able to circle back and learn who we are, and have, the source of everything we're looking for inside of us. And so this chapter does a good job of starting that narrative of that.